They didn't dig a tunnel. They didn't bribe a guard. They didn't crawl through a sewer or scale a wall. They flew. A helicopter hovered over the prison yard, its blades carving the air into chaos. Guards dropped their radios. Inmates froze mid-stride. Dust, paper, and disbelief exploded in every direction. Then, movement. A figure sprinted across the courtyard, head low, coat whipping in the wind. Another followed. Before anyone could react, the helicopter tilted, climbed, and vanished over the perimeter. No tunnels, no tricks, just the sky. And what sounded like a movie plot was real. Because some criminals didn't escape through prison walls, they escaped over them. These are the true stories of men who refused to be caged. Men who decided that if the ground trapped them, the only way out was up. The idea of using the sky as a door to freedom first captured headlines in 1971. Not in Canada, as often rumored, but in Mexico City. Inside the high walls of Santa Martha Acatitla prison, a quiet American businessman named Joel David Kaplan had been serving time on controversial charges. On August 19th, a Bell helicopter, painted to resemble a government aircraft, swooped down into the courtyard. Prison guards didn't even raise their rifles. They thought it was official business. The helicopter touched down. Kaplan sprinted toward it, climbed aboard, and within 30 seconds, it was gone. By the time the guards realized what had happened, the aircraft had disappeared into the clouds. It was one of the first successful helicopter escapes in history, a blueprint for dozens more to come. The stunt was so daring it inspired a Hollywood movie, Breakout, in 1975. From that day forward, every warden on Earth learned a hard truth. No wall is high enough when the sky is open. If the idea was born in Mexico, it was perfected in France. The 1980s in Paris, a decade of grit, glamour, and rebellion, gave rise to one of the most romanticized jailbreaks of all time. His name was Michel Vaujour, a career thief, a dreamer, a man who refused to be ordinary. His wife, Nadine, shared that fire. While Michel served time at La Santé prison, Nadine began to plot his rescue. Not by car, not by gunfire, but by sky. For years, she trained under false pretenses. She started flying lessons in 1983, posing as an aspiring pilot. By 1986, she had mastered enough to take control. On May 26th, she rented a small helicopter with an instructor for what was supposed to be a sightseeing trip over Paris. Mid-flight, she pulled out a pistol and calmly told the instructor, "Change course. We're going to La Santé." Inside the prison, Michel was already in motion. He carried a fake pistol and a handful of nectarines painted to look like grenades. With them, he bluffed his way through the guards and up to the roof. As Nadine approached, the rotors thundered over the city. Dust filled the air. Sirens began to wail. Michel ran toward the helicopter, ducking under the blades. Seconds later, they were airborne, rising above the gray walls of Paris, a husband and wife united in midair. They landed in a nearby field, switched vehicles, and disappeared. For 5 months, they lived as fugitives until police caught up. Michel was shot and rearrested. Nadine went to prison herself. But their story became legend. A love story written across the sky. If Michel and Nadine turned helicopter escapes into romance, Pascal Payet turned them into strategy. He didn't escape once. He escaped 3 times, all by helicopter. In 2001, Payet was serving a 30-year sentence at Luynes prison in southern France. One morning, a helicopter hijacked from a nearby airfield appeared over the walls. The pilot, held at gunpoint, was ordered to descend. Within seconds, Payet ran out, jumped aboard, and was gone. It was quick, clean, effortless. But Payette wasn't finished. 2 years later, in 2003, he returned. Not to surrender, but to free his friends. The same prison, the same plan. Another hijacked helicopter. Guards stared in disbelief as the aircraft dropped into the yard and 3 inmates climbed aboard. Then, as easily as it came, it lifted off and vanished. By 2005, Payette was caught again and placed under maximum security. His location became a secret, changed every 90 days. The government thought that would stop him. They were wrong. In 2007, another helicopter was hijacked, this time from the Cannes airfield. Armed men forced the pilot to fly to Grasse prison, where Payette was being held. In less than 10 minutes, he was airborne again, for the 3rd time. When police finally caught him later that year, his legend was complete. Pascal Payette, the man who had flown over every wall they built around him. March 17, 2013, Saint-Jérôme Prison, Quebec. The morning was quiet, until the hum of rotor blades rolled across the yard. Guards looked up to see a helicopter circling the facility. Inside, 2 inmates, Benjamin Houdon-Barbeau and Danny Provençal, were ready. Using smuggled cell phones, they had arranged everything. Their friends on the outside had hijacked a helicopter and forced the pilot to fly to the prison. The aircraft hovered just above the walls. A rope line dropped from its side. Houdon-Barbeau grabbed on first, wrapping his hands around the cable as the machine strained against the air. Then Provençal. Below them, guards shouted. The prison erupted in chaos. For a few incredible moments, 2 men dangled in midair, prisoners literally rising toward freedom. But the helicopter struggled under the weight. It drifted off course and set down in a nearby field. They switched to a getaway car and fled. Within hours, police captured all 4 men, the 2 inmates and their accomplices. Their freedom was short-lived, but the image was unforgettable. 2 convicts swinging from a helicopter over a Canadian prison. The ultimate real-life action movie. Then came Greece, and the outlaw they still call the Greek Robin Hood. Vasilis Paliokostas wasn't just a criminal, he was a folk hero. He robbed banks, kidnapped millionaires, and reportedly gave much of his money to the poor. But what made him legendary wasn't his crimes, it was his escapes. He did it not once, but twice. In June 2006, a hijacked helicopter descended into Korydallos prison in Athens. Guards opened fire, but it was too late. Paliokostas and his partner, Alket Rizai, sprinted across the yard, climbed aboard, and disappeared into the summer sky. They were free. 2 years later, Vasilis was caught and returned to Korydallos, under what was supposed to be impenetrable security. But history has a strange sense of humor, because in February 2009, it happened again. The same prison, the same plan, the same man. A hijacked helicopter dropped into the courtyard. A rope ladder unfurled through the air as guards fired from below. A female accomplice leaned from the helicopter, firing back with an automatic weapon while the bound, hooded pilot struggled to control the aircraft. Paliokostas and Rizai climbed the ladder, their uniforms whipping in the wind. Seconds later, they vanished into the blue. Vasilis Paliokostas has never been found. Some say he hides in the Greek mountains. Others believe he slipped across the border under a false identity. Whatever the truth, he remains a ghost, a man who looked at prison walls and saw the sky instead. After these escapes, the sky became both dream and nightmare. In June 2014, just a year after the Saint-Jérôme incident, 3 more inmates, Yves Denis, Denis Lefebvre, and Serge Pomerleau, pulled off a similar stunt from Orsanville Detention Center near Quebec City. Their accomplices hijacked a helicopter, landed inside the courtyard, and lifted them out in broad daylight. For over 2 weeks, They evaded capture before police finally tracked them down at a luxury condo north of Montreal. By then, Canada had suffered 2 helicopter jailbreaks in as many years, a record that forced officials to completely rethink prison air security. No one could ignore it anymore. The sky was now part of the battlefield. Every helicopter escape shared the same anatomy: speed, precision, and a willingness to risk everything. The aircraft became the ultimate symbol of power, a machine that could drop from the heavens, defy every guard tower, and disappear into the horizon. But with every airborne breakout, authorities adapted. Courtyards were covered with steel mesh. Flight paths near prisons were restricted. Pilots were warned, approach a prison and you'll be intercepted. Still, the fear lingered. Because if you can control the sky, there's no such thing as a perfect cage. Most of the fugitives were caught. A few vanished forever. But every one of them changed the world of prison security. Governments rewrote airspace laws. Flight plans are now cross-checked against prison coordinates. Courtyards once open to the sun are now wrapped in wire. Yet the idea of flying to freedom refuses to die. Even now, decades later, every time a helicopter drifts too close to a prison, someone looks up in alarm. Because they know, once, not long ago, men really did fly out of places meant to hold them forever. And every time it happens, the same uneasy question rises with the sound of the blades. If it worked before, could it work again? They didn't dig. They didn't crawl. They flew. For a few minutes, they rose above everything that held them down: gravity, guilt, walls, fate. Men suspended between earth and heaven, between punishment and redemption. And maybe that's why their stories endure. Because deep down, we all understand the desire to break free, to rise above our own walls, whatever they are. Helicopter escapes aren't just about crime. They're about courage, imagination, and the defiant human urge to touch the sky. So the next time you hear the echo of rotor blades in the distance, look up. Because somewhere, long ago, someone did the impossible. They looked at a prison and saw a runway. They made the sky their door.